Good evening. Hello. What a lovely circle of people we are tonight as we gather as the evening approaches and the day comes to a close. Welcome. Welcome to each one of you. Welcome to those who join us online as well. All of us who long for the company, the community, the deepest joys found in the soul's walk and also the deepest challenges, here we are. The story of our tradition on this day speaks to so many realities of our lives. It is not just the cruel death of a first-century visionary and leader. It's a story that pierces us with its violence and cruel power, that seeks to silence a critique. It's a story that speaks to the tendency to deny painful and inconvenient truths. It's a story of isolation and loyalties and betrayals. In other words, it's a story for every time and every place and every life. Tonight's story reveals shadows in our own hearts of truth and untruth, courage and cowardice, guilt and shame. And it reveals the strength and power to stand, to forgive, to live with integrity and compassion as well. All of us, I think, are seeking to be courageous when we're tempted to be silent. We're side by side, though, tonight, in the honoring of this day and this story, to strengthen each other's solidarity in honoring whatever is required, whether it's bold action in the face of fear or lamentation in the ways our powers and our systems can squash beauty and inhibit justice and hamper peace. We stand in the face of corruption that silences those who bring wrongs into the light and crushes those that stand up to the world's abuse of privilege and power. But most of all tonight, we're here to deepen our reverence for life. Amazing that we can do that surrounded on a day of stories of death and silence. We can deepen our reverence for life and our passion for justice. Let's open ourselves tonight to the power of love and life, to know how strong yet fragile they all are. And even when night is its darkest, we come with hearts to lament and to grieve, but also to shine glimmers of hope. This is our goal. This is the work of our lives. So let's come into this space, into this time, to do just that.
Come drinking Good evening. My name is Marilyn Blackhall, and I'm pleased to be the gathering companion for this evening's gathering. We light this candle because we celebrate light. The light of wisdom among us today, in each of us. The light of wisdom that stretches back farther than our memories, to the reaches of creation. The light of wisdom that encircles Abraham and Moses, Jesus of Nazareth, and the Christian witness. That encircles Muhammad, Buddha, and the wisdom of spiritual endeavor. We light this candle because we celebrate the light that dwells within each of us and that we continue to seek on our journey in this place. To stop and recognize the value of our time and place is to acknowledge the value of this moment. To recognize our land as traditional territory is to see its long history, reaching beyond colonization and the establishment of European colonies that set up a system in which we can say we can own or rent this land and call it ours. To acknowledge the traditional land helps us see the significance of the indigenous peoples who lived and continue to live in the places we are, whose practices and spiritualities are tied to the land and continue to develop in relationship to the land and its other inhabitants, a teaching from which we must always learn. And so today, here in Edmonton and area, as well as in the Saskatoon area, we recognize that we are situated on Treaty 6 territory, traditional lands of many First Nations and the Métis people. Wherever you are, may you recognize the great and long history of place and land in which you find yourselves, and may these moments lead us to intentions and actions to live in strong relationship with the earth and all the planet's people and structures and creatures.
Here's one rendition of the story that gives us this night. It comes from the Gospel of Matthew. Chapter 27, selected verses. The religious authorities had been whipping the crowd into a frenzy about Jesus. So when Pilate the governor saw that a riot was imminent, he wanted nothing more to do with it and turned Jesus over to be whipped and crucified. The soldiers assigned to the governor took Jesus into the palace and got the entire brigade together. They had some fun with him by stripping him and dressing him in a purple robe. They plaited a crown from branches of a thorn bush and set it on his head. They put a stick in his right hand for a scepter. Then they knelt before him in mocking reverence. "Bravo, King of the Jews!" Then they spit on him and hit him on the head with the stick. When they had had their fun, they took off the robe, put his own clothes back on him, and proceeded out to the crucifixion. After they had finished nailing him to the cross and were waiting for him to die, they killed time by throwing dice for his clothes. Above his head, they'd posted the criminal charge against him: "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Along with him, they also crucified two criminals, one to his right, the other to his left. People passing along the road jeered, shaking their heads in mock lament. The high priests, along with the religious scholars and leaders, were mixing it up with the rest of them, having a good time, poking fun. "He saved others," they said. "He can't save himself, can he? King of Israel, is he? Then let him get down from that cross." Around mid-afternoon, Jesus groaned out of the depths, crying loudly. Some bystanders who heard him said, "He's calling for Elijah, isn't he?" One of them ran and got a sponge soaked in sour wine, lifted it on a stick so he could drink. And the others joked, "Don't be in such a hurry. Let's see if Elijah does come and save him." But Jesus, again, crying out loudly, breathed his last breath and died there on the cross. These are words passed down to us from the first century Christian tradition. May we find wisdom for our living.
This wisdom reading is entitled "The Unwatched Space" by Mark Nepo. I imagined, like everyone else at school, that my parents were sitting just out of view, like those quiet doctors behind clean mirrors, watching and reprimanding my every move. From an early age, we are taught by parents, family, society, and various traditions that our actions are being judged. If we fail or come up wanting, we are censured by others to some form of living hell. Once we've internalized the watcher, we carry this living hell inside our minds, its voice sounding like shame, guilt, or regret. After a surgery to remove a rib, I awoke crying because I had not only been physically open, but also open beneath my sense of being watched. Somehow, the unwatched space was given air. Though I could explain it to no one, my sobs were sobs of relief. It took almost a lifetime for me to realize that no one is watching. This doesn't mean we are alone, but that no one is out of view judging us. Now the audience of watchers is gone, and I can feel life happen in its quiet, vibrant way without anything interfering. While I am always accountable for my actions in the world, I am not under the watch of some moral tribunal everywhere I go. For true responsibility comes solely from the hard work of actual relationship, the authentic push and pull between honest, caring souls. In this undistorted silence, in this unwatched space, peace begins. These are words of a contemporary spiritual writer. May we find wisdom for our living.
It's been a number of weeks of exploring both the shadow and the light of our living, intentionally looking at the places within us that are most uncomfortable for us to acknowledge. Self-doubt, anger, anxiety, imbalance, mortality. Tonight, in this night that recognizes the story of Jesus last night, it gives us the opportunity to enter a safe space to ponder the places of guilt and shame in our living, and help us to name it so that we might together find ways to befriend our past, to move more healthily toward tomorrow. First of all, I want to put this out there right at the front. There is an adaptive and helpful side to guilt. Guilt isn't all bad. We hold something we've done or failed to do up against the values we feel, and if we sense an imbalance there, we have this natural psychological discomfort about that what we're doing or what we've done hasn't met up to what we expected of ourselves. And that can lead to the work of righting the wrong or bringing those two into alignment. I would personally prefer not to call that guilt. But it is a discomfort that we live with and we seek to do something about. But there are much, much more powerful and negative sides to guilt and shame that elicit an intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love or belonging or good things or happiness or you name it. Mark Nepo expressed it in such a meaningful way, I thought, in comparing it to being instilled with this idea that there is someone watching. If it's not mom and dad, then it's Santa Claus, because he's watching. What is it? Checking if we're naughty or nice, right? And if it's not Santa, it's a version of the God in the sky that is always watching not only for your actions, oh my gosh, this is the frightening part, but your thoughts. How terrifying. And all of this forms us as young people, forms an often unspoken but powerful image that translates into our understandings of self and world, our very spirituality. There is always someone watching. And then we grow up, and perhaps we don't have a enlightening experience post-surgery like Mark Nepo did, but we all do grow up and we encounter different experiences of non-acceptance or narrowness, or places we don't fit into the boxes that others have created and think we ought to fit in. And we translate that into our own senses of self-judgment. And lo and behold, after all of that, guess what? We end up being we, ourselves, the ones inflicting the guilt and shame on us. We do it to ourselves. So I ask a question right now that we may ponder over the next little while. What messages from our watchers, and by that I mean those voices and whispers and feelings inside, what messages live internalized, as Nepo has said, as a living hell inside your mind and in your heart? What messages are heard as guilt and shame and regret? Whether those are voices from our past or present, whether they're imagined or real, whether they're from ourselves or others, what are the voices of guilt and shame saying to you? And whether you do that now or whether you do it a little bit later, in which we'll have some space and time to do so, we're going to write those on our little pieces of paper. They're for no one else to see but you. And if that's helpful to you, I invite you to do that. Or we can hold those papers for later when we'll have time to treat them in a symbolic time of ritual. But that way of acknowledging, this series has always been about acknowledging the shadows, regardless of what we do with them, recognizing that they're there, gazing our eyes upon them with whatever courage we can muster, and knowing that we're all in that same boat. So, what does the story of this night we commemorate tonight speak of this shadowy space? What we are given in the accounts of a death that by any definition is horrid is an itemization, if you'll allow it, of all the ways in which this story is built upon acts of shame and ridicule. When we do that, we find not just a story of a man put to death for treason, but a story of systematic public shaming. I'll do this really fast. It's like a Band-Aid. Jesus is scourged or whipped with sharp objects to bring about bleeding and pain. His clothing and property are confiscated, leaving him naked at various times. A symbol not only in first century, but any time of powerlessness and public embarrassment. Jesus is made to carry his own cross to the place of execution. The fact that it was taken up by a passerby really just trades one shame for another in the involvement of an innocent party. Jesus is taunted and mocked, the crown of thorns, a symbol of the charge that he was purporting to be king of the Jews, placed on his head, then repeatedly struck, so that can't feel good. He was treated with contempt, more accurately translated, treated as though he were nothing. He was spit upon, an act of public humiliation. And then that goes without saying, the very act of execution. Sorry, I don't think it likes me standing right there. The very act of execution by crucifixion is a long and slow and painful suffocation, a loss of agency, of bodily control, of dignity. So, the story itself is built upon acts of shame and humiliation. How that story was crafted and how it's been used in the intervening thousands of years is something we might question. Through the work of the Christian tradition, that shame and guilt that is found in that story and humiliation has been, through the workings of theological dogma, transferred to everyone who reads it. It became a tool to shame and guilt everyone within the tradition. If you've been formed or have an experience in any expression of the Christian church, you'd think that the job of Good Friday is to make sure that we count ourselves as culpable. I remember hearing this as a child all the time. That we're just as to blame as the people who did this to Jesus. Theologically, it became the basis for a doctrine of atonement that gave Jesus' death a purpose in willingly choosing this death in some cosmic transaction. And that transaction will benefit everyone, including you and me. And the message in that old traditional dogma is that shame on us if we don't honor and worship that sacrifice and pay for it by our continued obedience to live according to the narrow definitions of the powers that be would have us live, whether it be the church or the politicians or whomever. Look up naked pastor on your Google or any device, and you'll find a very talented and poignant artist. This being one of his cartoons. That seems like maybe the wrong word to use. So the question is it any wonder that those within the tradition have large looming shadows of guilt and shame that inhibit our wholeness and health? Because the tradition that many of us have grown up in, even liberal Christianity in singing their songs about, "Were you there when they crucified my Lord?" Well, my God, No, I was not, thank you very much. Okay, so can we strip the story from the harmful dogma and doctrine for a minute? The death of this and many wisdom teachers and movement initiators is the result, let's be honest, of a fearful and violent occupying empire. No one else is to blame. The reality is a life of purpose to liberate, to teach compassion in a brutal world, and to bring hope to people, empowering them to be more than their elite authoritarian leaders say they are, brings with it a certain danger. It did then, it does now. It brings a force and an ongoing movement that threatens the elite, that threatens the status quo. And this story opens our eyes to the real countercultural reality and radical message that love and liberation is in our world. It will very often be faced with authorities that, because of that liberation, will lose power, lose money, lose market share, lose authority, lose control, and because of that will do anything to put a stop and maintain their power. So the other question for us always when we hear this story is, where is it still happening? Where are the forces of control and domination trying to eliminate liberating love and the power it brings? You and I could make lists a mile long. And if we strip this story of that power to shame, I don't know if it's possible. Can you strip a shame story out of its shame? But anyway, what are we left with? Perhaps lament. Lament for violence as a means of control. Lament for how shame and guilt diminishes the human spirit. Lament for the kind of liberating love that so often is quashed by forces that are big and strong and rich and powerful. We'll lament that it happened then, and we'll lament how it happens now. Perhaps, too, though, we're left with something else in this story. Perhaps we're left with the vision of that liberating love that just may survive through the shadows and live to shine another day. And so tonight is a time for that hope as well. So I invite us into a time when we contemplate the places of shame and guilt that dwell in the shadows, and bring them to light. This is a time when we can imagine a different reality, one that tonight's wisdom has written as the responsibility that comes solely from the hard work of actual relationship. The authentic push and pull between honest, caring souls. That it's in that silence, in that environment, in that unwatched place that peace begins. So into this time, you're invited to ponder the places of guilt and shame that dwell within you. You might choose to move these from the hidden shadows of your mind and heart and onto a piece of paper. But into this time of quiet and music that will happen momentarily, perhaps you will also want to move them from shadow to light, and that's enough. And you'll stuff that piece of paper in your pocket, and it will remind you to do the work of acknowledging and confronting these thoughts and transform them in whatever work is to come tomorrow. Or perhaps you'll choose to take those places of lament and guilt and shame with you to the front and crumple them and place them here in this lighted bowl as a symbol of release. But we don't honor and acknowledge our shadow without the light. They do embrace each other. And so if you place, or if you don't, if you come forward to place your shadow in the bowl, come and also receive a candle and light it from our community candle as symbol of the transformation that happens within the safety of honest, caring connection and our commitment to the hard work of liberating love. May we see that transformation in a blaze of light that we can hold as we let go of all that holds us back and embrace the light of hope and endurance. The power of this day is when shadow and light embrace, that we bring what we need to into the light and also be free to release it and live in the hope of tomorrow's light and the endurance that we have to get there. So may this time be for us whatever we need it to be as we appreciate this music and enter into this time of symbol and ritual.
Please join with me in reading the words on the screen as we strengthen our intentions. In the face of injustice and hurt, we will not be satisfied with blaming the victim, pretending that nothing is wrong, or accepting that nothing can be done. We acknowledge the dangers of labeling any individual or group as other. We will not accept the excuses that have attempted to justify collusion, silence and complacency, inhumanity and atrocity. We refuse to accept cruelty and suffering as a path toward the good. We will seek a better way that works for change while alleviating pain. We will not be complicit with injustice, nor will we accept fear and violence in silence. We will speak and live in ways that disarm and bring understanding, equity, and peace. We will stand with victims and seek to understand those who victimize. We will not settle for easy answers. We will work toward learning and living the wisdom of those who teach peace. We will refuse to see violence anywhere as an act of divine judgment, a holy war, or the will of any god. We will seek to bring the light of our deepest convictions and compassion to outshine cowardice, fear tactics, shame, and violence. May we live these intentions each day in all the ways we are able. We pray in the hope of peace, the work of justice, and the spirit of persevering love.
important it is to take light into the night and into whatever shadow we find there. So may this light go with us, literally, if you'd like, but figuratively for sure. We are awaiting something to shine, awaiting justice to take hold, peace to reign, and solutions that are based in love and the perseverance of all of us to get there. Would you respond to this closing time with the words, "May it be so"? It's our wish, it's our hope, it's our blessing. May we be blessed with the discomfort of easy answers, half-truths and superficial relationships, so that we may live deep within our hearts. May it be so. May we be blessed with anger at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of others, so that we may work for justice, freedom, and peace. May it be so. May we be blessed with tears to shed for those who suffer from pain, rejection, starvation, war, and rejection of every kind, so that we may reach out our hands to comfort and bring joy. May it be so. And may we be blessed with enough foolishness to believe that we can make a difference in this world, so that we may do what some claim cannot be done. May it be so.
What I do, let the